What does it mean, being a fan? You help people stay cool in the summer, of course. But beyond that, fan is the diminutive of the word fanatic, a cute, mainstream way of referring to a madman, a person filled with excessive and single-minded zeal. It is quite interesting how the word became affirmed, losing its negative connotation, which was transferred to the word stan, just as fandoms seem to increasingly act according to definition, a process not exclusive to entertainment, but for the sake of this video, boy, we've seen some shit in the RWBY fandom over the years, haven't we? This wasn't exactly discouraged by Rooster Teeth, they were spared the side effects of it only as long as they managed to keep up the fun internet uncle persona, but that did not last. Just like the overall quality of RWBY didn't either, with its flaws being increasingly on display season after season. So, what happens when the grassroots pioneers you were a fan of become just another company? When the imperfect show you adore is bogged down by narrative blemishes and terrible loss? The only healthy thing to do after denial, anger, bargaining, and depression is to keep moving forward. Things get a bit more complicated if you're a fan creator, though, and if you're a fan creator with a fan base of your own, I think me and RWBY are going to be joined at the hip forever, lads. I've never played a Halo game. I didn't have an Xbox growing up, I had a PS2. Then I got a 360, but mostly used it to play Left 4 Dead with my brother and cousins, which is to say, I did not care for Red vs Blue even after becoming aware of it. What I did like though was Screw Attack's Death Battle series, which was my first contact with RWBY, the infamous Tifa Lockhart vs Yang Xiaolong battle, which even fans of the series admitted was bullshit. At that time, Rooster Teeth had just acquired Screw Attack. I put 2 and 2 together. From the very beginning, Rooster Teeth was just another company to me, and RWBY was something I had no interest in because of the way I was first introduced to it. But thankfully, I had a friend. A very good friend, who I still have and love to bits, and deserves a shout out because I would have never done what I did next if not for them. This friend knows my taste in character design and personalities very well. Thus, all they needed to do to convince me to give RWBY a chance was show me a picture of Penny Polendina. I won't say it was love at first sight, but the closest version you can get to with a fictional character happened. Thus did my adventure with RWBY start, and I found out that I really liked it. Then I heard that the guy from Dead Fantasy was involved, and I was even more excited. Everything was looking upwards, except this was the summer of 2016. The finale of Volume 3 hit me like a truck. I was shocked as a fan, but as a writer, I was outraged. To this day, I am not a fan of the way the follow beacon happened. I'm especially not a fan of Penny's treatment of her arc in the show, both early and especially later. If I had to bring the why down to brass tacks, as for her inspiration, Collodi's Pinocchio, Penny's entire arc in the show was building up to her becoming a real girl. The conversation she has with RWBY in that alley in Volume 2 as RWBY reassures Penny that she's still a normal human girl because what counts is what's inside. There is a couple problems with this. The first is that Pinocchio in the original story wasn't just a puppet, he was a menace. Disney's version sold off most of the edge, making him, at worst, very gullible. Instead, Penny in RWBY is the sweetest character on the show, on top of being incredibly strong. Also, Pinocchio's puppetness was out in the open. Penny's existence is hidden, and it is clearly a source of great fear and insecurity for her. RWBY's speech always felt off to me, because despite her intentions, it does not change the fact that Penny is not a normal human being. And that's perfectly fine. She doesn't need to be one. She deserves love and friends and a long life nonetheless. These are just my personal feelings about it, but I think Penny's arc would have been better served by focusing on acceptance despite her diversity. And from a broader narrative arc, I was stoked. It had been established that only living things can have aura, and here it is, an artificially created being truly alive, producing aura and using it to kick ass? The narrative implications. How did Enrico do it? What does this mean for Remnant? There's already trouble accepting Fauni. What about Penny's kind? What does this mean for the story going forward? It means that they can tear someone to shreds without including a higher content rating. To say I was pissed would be an understatement. And what do I do when I'm pissed? I write. Well, in that case, I role-played. I went back to my friend, and after venting, we started putting down the basis of a roleplay where Penny would get everything she deserved. A team of friends, a love interest that would accept her for what she was, continued existence. The more we played around with this, the more I liked it, and then I realized that what we had put down was good enough to base a fanfiction around it. I started planning that down when I had an idea. At the time, I'd been dabbling with RWBY, the visual novel engine. I'd been slowly learning how to use it, even trying my hand at a prototype for a horror story that went nowhere, networking with artists and commissioning them. So I thought to myself, what if? What if? 8 years later, with a sequel and a remaster in the works, that what if exploded into something bigger than I could have ever imagined. And it all started with one sweet redhead girl who I thought deserved better than what she got. So, thank you, Penny. And thank you, Ruby and Rooster Teeth. No matter your path and your end, I cannot deny what you gave me. It's been so long that a lot of people probably don't know, but I did not go into making JPDE with the intention of making an alternate universe. I did want to give Penny what she deserved, yes, but past that, I wanted to stick to canon as much as possible. I intended to make a story that would be able to plausibly take place in the background of the original RWBY series without disrupting it, a kinetic visual novel kind of matter, you know? But then, I also thought, what if I make it like Princess Waltz? In that game, the main character will always end up with one girl, no matter what. The branching paths are about choosing the third component of a trouble. I figured, I could do that kind of story, add a little bit of a branching thing with the other RWBY girls. Then, after that, I thought about adding Persona 4 inspired gameplay with a school year-based calendar progression, different times of day, social skills. Then, of course, RWBY has so much fighting and battles, I couldn't not have a battle system. That last one was the best and worst choice I've ever made, thinking about it now. In retrospect, it was clear from the beginning that I would have never been able to stick to canon. It wasn't just a matter of not liking where the RWBY story was going, but also because the more support I got from fans, the more I became able to experiment. JPDE is as much a story of a bunch of fictional characters as it is my story of growth as an author. You can literally see my learning curve by playing the game. You can see me getting better at writing, directing, scripting, coding, editing, pacing. The game allowed me to learn so much, perfect so many skills, and the best part is that it all happens spontaneously, by just following my gut, my personal instincts for what would make a cool addition to the story and the world that I was crafting. JPDE and the support of its fans gave me almost unparalleled freedom, within certain limits. Another thing that developing the game taught me was the lot of a producer. The more the support of the fans grew, the more artists I could connect with. The more artists I could connect with, the more things could be done, but also the more people and tasks I needed to keep track of. The more I needed to keep a close eye on the budget and allocate the resources properly. What I went in for was a nice, cute game about Penny. What I got was a crash course in video game making on all levels, and 8 years later, I have a profound appreciation for all the roles and energies and type of artistry and non-artistry that go into making our entertainment, which is why I'm always so testy about workers and consumer rights in the sector. That's also why I'm so harsh on bad managers and project leads, because I've seen firsthand how much, when making a game, depends on them. The moment my project became a team effort, it also became my responsibility to steer the boat so that people will be able to work on it without driving themselves to an early grave. Not to say that I have not had bad experiences with artists. I was scammed a couple times, a few flaked on me, one pretty much ignored all the guidelines I gave them, but after 8 years of doing this, I can say with confidence, whenever there is big messes happening during production of anything in entertainment, the fault usually lies up high. So, I got freedom, but also responsibility. Responsibility to the players to deliver the best game I could, and responsibility to my team to steer their energy and creativity towards something they could be proud of. Which meant that soon enough, I started feeling the constraints of canon RWBY. Here's the thing, I think we can all agree that RWBY's world building is pretty light, and by that I don't mean that it's bad. It's not that RWBY doesn't have any lore or exposition or there, it's just that it always felt, to me, like the crafting of the background on things like nations, aura, history, etc., 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 hinged on the needs of the plot and character arcs. I take a different approach to writing. World building is not built out of narrative needs, but I see it as part of the narrative. It's the stage, if you will, where our performance takes place. It informs the limits of what can happen and how. I started doing this for JPDE as well, at first only feeling holes left by the original canon, but eventually I had to choose between. Do I want to keep expanding JPD's world building, or do I want to be religious and respect the sanctity of RWBY's canon world building? In the end, I decided to be blasphemous. Starting with the way aura works, going into a relationship between certain characters, and going as far as modifying the way green work as a species. Just to give you an example, I decided to not have Salem be the supreme wicked witch of the green. In JPDE, she only has a limited influence on these monsters born of darkness. Why? Because in my head, if Salem had always had this supreme influence on green, even going as far as being able to create brand new species, cloak and dagger tactics make no sense, especially since she's existed long before Remnant evolved technologically. That kind of influence would have netted her an easy apocalyptic win. It's only a small part of all the modifications I made to canon RWBY. The more I made, the more I realized just how much I liked filling in the blanks and going into detail on things that the original series, even had it wanted to, couldn't have, because an animated series has limited space and time to go over everything. But a video game, a visual novel of all things, it was time to go off. But just because it excites me, it doesn't mean it's easy. Keeping track of everything and making sure it all fits properly together is a task and an half. I've recently started writing a proper JPD Bible to help me with that, as a Dungeon of Darkness is going places. Also, there are certain things that I found myself wanting and having to write that I am a bit scared of, not going to lie. I do think about how they can get received by the audience, especially when it comes to characterization. And for this next example, I'm going to need to go into big spoilers. Big spoilers both for JPD 1 and JPD 2 Episode 6, which is the latest public release. If you haven't finished JPD 1 or played JPD 2 Episode 6, skip ahead to this timestamp. Last warning, you're about to get spoiled, I'ma give you 10 more seconds. Still here? Alrighty then. So, in the JPD alternate universe, Summer Rose is alive. Yep. Her absence has not changed, and she has been believed dead nonetheless, but unlike in the original RWBY canon, she's not deceased. She's just somewhere, doing something she can't not do. Ruby and David find this out after the events in the city of Peak. She intervenes to save them both, admonishes David, and gives Ruby a task: find Maria Calavera and get training in the powers of the Silver Eyes. Fast forward to JPDE 2, which takes place after a 3 years time skip from the fall of Beacon. Ruby Rose has done just that. She's found Maria, convinced the Grim Reaper to train her, and that's how Team JPDE finds them in Menagerie. But then it hit me. Ruby Rose found out that their mother was alive all along. She couldn't come back to her family because she was doing something really important. Yes, she most definitely would have come back to them if she could have. Yes, but still, she wasn't there. As Ruby grew up, as her family fell apart, as she went through the formative stages of her life and the tragedy of the fall of Beacon, Summer Rose, her mother, was not around. And now Ruby knows that. Not only that, I'd literally just made Ruby spend 3 years one-on-one with an older female figure. An older female figure whose only goal during that period has been to teach and nurture Ruby to make her into a better Ruby and a better person than Maria herself. Oh no! It may have been by complete chance, but once I realized where I had brought Ruby's character, there was no escaping that scene in episode 6. I was a nervous wreck while writing it. I must have gone over it like 3-4 times, I don't even remember, because it pretty much stabs at what is the heart of the original show. Ruby's Red trailer literally starts with Ruby visiting her mother's grave. The larger-than-life figure of Summer Rose has been an integral part of the story since the beginning. It influences Ruby's approach to life in everything she does, and in JPDE, it is called into question. Thing is, I couldn't not write that scene. Every instinct I have as a writer told me either you write this or just stop writing this story entirely, because the scene, as suffered a choice as it was necessary for the character arc of both Ruby and Maria, allowing them to finally be honest with one another and keep moving forward. But also because if I chickened out at a scene where Ruby confronts her mommy issues, I will never survive writing about what Yang's been up to during the time skip. So at this point, it feels natural to ask, what next? Right now, I'm tremendously happy making JPDE. I no longer think of it as just a fan work. It is my work. It's got so much of myself in it and of all the people I collaborated and still collaborate with that it couldn't be anything else. I intend to keep on making it as long as the narrative allows it. I intend to keep learning from it, making it better, and nurture the community that has been born around it. Our Discord server is 4,500 people strong. I literally cannot believe how big it's gotten. We got Twitter and the YouTube channel, and we play games. It's great. There is so many activities going on. A lot of them don't really have anything to do with Ruby. We just do it because we like it. Like the latest, we are trying to make a fictional manifesto for a fictional new Europe, and so many people joined in and it was so much fun. I loved it. Also, I intend to make JPDE 12% more queer. Ever since I came out, I've been more and more comfortable writing queer characters. That's what I meant. I can't wait for you to see more shenanigans with Andrea, for example. I intend to keep learning new skills. Like, for example, did you know that I started a musical collaboration project with Nailik Noteworks, Aura Beats? We're going to try and release a new song every 2 months, starting with one from the perspective of Andrea. And speaking of music, I also intend to release all of JPDE's original soundtrack music on streaming services. We started with a boss battle track from JPDE 2 as an EP. Next, we're going to be releasing a full album. And finally, I intend to make my own original games. There was an attempt with Galaxia, but the feedback I got from the pilot was humbling, and very much needed. We're now reworking it into something else, and I'll try and take myself much less seriously this time. I hope to see you guys around for a long time. There's a lot of curveballs coming your way in JPDE 2, and no, I'm not going to elaborate on any of the things I hinted at in the previous section. You're just going to have to wait and see, or wait some more if you don't support the team on Patreon or Coffee. Ciao! Oh, what the hell. I guess I can give you a little tease.